Podcast on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and today I'm very happy to have on the show writer-director Bart Freundlich, and we're talking about its brand new movie, After the Wedding, which stars Julianne Moore, Michelle Williams, Billy Crudup, and Abby Quinn. It's a wonderful cast, a wonderful movie, and I'm very excited to be talking about this today with you, Bart. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. This movie opened the Sundance Film Festival this year, and although I did not get to see it at the festival, I was there, but I didn't get to see it there, the movie there. But there was a lot of buzz throughout the festival after the movie premiered, and I was very excited about seeing the film. I talk a lot on this show that when we go to the movies, we need to be moved in some way. Whether if it's a comedy, we need to laugh. Obviously, a horror, we need to be scared, or just moved, or have it cause us to think a little deeper about something. This movie really moved me. I have to say, I cried numerous times throughout this movie, and I really, really, really loved it. So
thank you.
You're
Thanks
very
so
welcome.
much.
You're very welcome.
I couldn't agree more about what at least what my agenda at the movies is to somehow feel like emotionally engaged, and this film is the original, which is a Danish film by a director named Susanne Bier, who made a beautiful movie, 2006. When I saw it, it was just, it's so it's so deep about human relations.
Yes.
But it also has this great big plot, which is so unusual to have both of those things in a film. Well, so I was very attracted to that marriage. No pun intended.
Well, what's really interesting too is that you think it's going to go one way. Think, oh, okay, because we've seen so many formulaic movies, and you think it's going to go one way, and it doesn't, and it does twist and turn, and I liked that because there was another little surprise that you weren't expecting, and I just thought that was the beauty of the film too, that it just wasn't something that we've seen before. It is different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree.
You're welcome. And you did something. So you based this on the Danish film, but you made changes in it because you actually wrote this as well as directed it.
I did. I adapted it, and I feel like it's a reimagining of what her story was. The biggest difference is that Suzanne had two males in the lead, two men, and then we changed it to two women, which changed a lot of the narrative, and it changed a lot of the meaning of the film, and it kind of gave it this new life and allowed me to make it my own and not just feel like I was imitating someone else's work. But it was fascinating and it also allowed me to work with my wife Julianne Moore in one of the leads, but it just kind of gave it a new life and a new perspective, and I think made it, her film is so deep, but this just explored the depth, like what we're all going to face in our life eventually, and all the things we value in a different way, because it was about mothers and daughters, not just about fathers and daughters.
Right. And without giving away anything, just so our audience knows a little bit about what we're talking about, do you want to give a quick synopsis of what the film's about without giving anything away?
Yeah, I know that's the challenge with this movie.
I know, it is.
I think part of the pleasure of seeing this movie is that it's like an old school, the movies that I grew up loving, like Kramer versus Kramer, in terms of endearment, or Ordinary People, things that you felt like you had real sustenance. You took sustenance from, and you had seen something that entertained you, but also really moved you. So it is really difficult to talk about the movie because the entertaining part, I think, are these levels of secrets that uncover slowly throughout the movie and form the whole picture. But the basics of the setup is Michelle Williams plays a woman who works at an orphanage in India, has kind of given most of her life selflessly to doing this work, and she's offered the orphanage is offered $2 million from a very wealthy businesswoman back in New York. but in order to get it, Michelle kind of has to go sing for her supper. And she goes to New York and she ends up being Julianne Moore, who is this very successful businesswoman and couldn't be more different and value things in a different way. And from there, you start to realize that Michelle, there's more to that meets the eye. Michelle has been called back to New York for a much, much different reason that we don't understand yet. And it's this slow burn, but it's kind of this beautiful puzzle that gets put together as you get to know these people. And for at least for my taste, these are two of the top actors, really three of the top actors, but especially the people who play the leads, Michelle and Julie, are two of the top actors working. So just to see what they do with one another, I think is worth it.
I totally agree. I was just going to say that. I said you have, two of the top actresses, in the business today. And of course, as you mentioned, Julianne Moore is your wife, and you've worked with her on numerous projects in the past. But, and I'm sure you have a shorthand, but, each time you probably approach a film with her, it's different. And then you add in Michelle Williams and Billy Cudrup, who we don't see that often. I really always enjoy him whenever he's on the screen, too. But what was it like with that dynamic between Julianne and Michelle? Because they really are both on top of their game.
They are, and they're both actors who they take all their information from the script and the characters. So they're not people who, you don't think of either of those actors as people who just bring their personality to the screen. They're always they're chameleon-esque, so they're always changing. You don't recognize them from one film to the other. So it was interesting in that way because I had no idea what they were really going to bring to this. We talked about it, but they're just both so on fire creatively. And what I love about them is neither of them feels like they need to ask for sympathy from the audience. Neither has to be the good guy. And that's another element of the movie that really fascinated me, was this is kind of about the decisions we make in our life and the consequences they have. And the movie's not saying this person was right and this person was wrong. It's saying, hey, this is, you make choices, and those choices, inform your life. and I loved watching Michelle and Julie own their perspectives. One, they both believe they're right, and they're both coming at this from very, very different angles.
Does this make your job easier? Do you get to sit back and just watch and let them take over? Or, how much direction is involved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as a director, I do believe that one of my fortes is hiring good people, and not only good people who just are in general good at their job, but people who also connect to this particular story. I'm always more interested in an actor who is really dying to be in this role than someone who I might admire and know their body of work more, but they are not sure. So these two actors happen to love these individual roles and just didn't the layers and layers of exploration. So I knew when to give them space and how to guide them in an overall sense, but I really did try to sit back and enjoy and watch them. When they're at the desk, they have a scene in the beginning when they first meet, and I did have this moment of feeling like it was my Pacino De Niro moment in Heat, where these two, because they're so explosive, they're so alive inside, and it was really exciting to turn the camera on and see what they did, because they also compartmentalize beautifully as actors. They don't carry their character throughout the day with them, whereas some people do. Right. These two are able to say action, and they go, and then you stop, and then you talk about it, and then they go again. They're not there. You don't have to call them by their character names throughout the process.
I wonder if have you had that happen with other actors or actresses where they stay in character throughout the filming of the movie?
Not as literally as that, but people who you start to understand, this is they're working themselves up because this is a big scene today, and that's kind of bleeding into their personal interactions. So I understand that, and I don't begrudge anyone. Whatever it takes to get there, I would be a terrible actor. I can't, I couldn't do what they do. But yeah, I've certainly had people where I'm like, what's going on today? Oh, I see. They're shooting this scene where they have to explode, and they're feeling like they're on the edge of exploding the whole day.
That's interesting. It would be interesting, to be around that kind of energy all day long. I think.
Yep.
Would be, what's your directorial style?
Well, I'm really, I feel like I'm a writer director, so I really value story and screenplay, so it comes from the story. I mean, I've made movies. The movie I made before this was called Wolves, and it was with Michael Shannon and Carla Gugino, and it was about a high school basketball star and his family. And that was very handheld camera, very cinema verite, and just much rougher around the edges because the story called for that, or that's how I decided to interpret it. And this story is much more traditional in the way it's told. We shot it with the same camera that they used for Roma. So it's these big widescreen moments. And it's much more kind of laid back. We don't tell you what to feel at any given moment.
Right.
We try to let these actors do their magic, and we try to hang on their face long enough that you get a chance to really look at them the way you do in real life with people, where usually the longer you look at someone, the more you get to know them and imagine what their inner life is like. So it's it really depends on story for me, as far as the way I'm telling visually. But I think my style with crew and with cast is I'm not someone who thrives off conflict. Some people like to create an environment which is just, they think it's more alive. I prefer to create an environment where I feel like everyone is comfortable to take risks creatively. That's going to be best for me ultimately. So I try to just let everyone know that early on.
Oh, that's great, because I think there's, that having that sense of safety, as I would call it, that you can open up and allow yourself to be more creative and explore, because you're not, you're in a safer environment. And I think that breeds better creativity than being in conflict. I think, if you're around that, I think that just creates more stress, unless the film calls for that or something,
I know that. Well, there are those moments, I guess, where, and I've heard a lot of them from directors where they've kind of manipulated the person into, it's hot you make it hot in the room, or you don't give them good feedback, so they're just kind of they're unsure of where they are, and that works for the scene. It's just not who I am, and it's we're also living a life, and it's nice to have a nice, good workplace to go to.
Well, you work a lot with your wife, Julianne Moore, as we said, and I one of the first when I went to Sundance Film Festival, the very first one I went to was 1997, and and The Myth of Fingerprints was your premiere there also at Sundance Film Festival, and I did see that one at the film festival, actually.
Did you?
I did. So, what was that experience like? It's your very first film, and you're premiering it at Sundance. What was that experience like for you in 1997 when you were just getting started?
I was 20. I just had turned 27, I guess. It was amazing because also Sundance is still a very prestigious festival, but in those days it was something different even, to be in competition at Sundance was a huge stamp of approval from like the independent film community. So I'm not sure if I knew exactly what I was getting into, but it was kind of this like magical 9 days. I got to go with Julianne, who we were together by that point, and you get to show your movie. I think it was 9 times over the course of a week, and go talk to audience members. People are just so hungry for film there. Yes. They're so active in their feedback that it's like this. It's just so exciting to do it. And I may have made the mistake of thinking that it was always going to be like that. We'll just go to Sundance, but it did come back around, to this year, 22 years later, to have Robert Redford introducing the movie on opening night did feel like it was a nice, like, little closure of a circle, and in fact, Sony Classics, who's releasing the film, released my first movie as well. So there are a lot of similarities.
Full circle moment.
Yeah, full circle.
Yeah, full circle
for sure.
moment. And it had to be a little, I don't know, maybe I would think for me it would be a little surreal to have Robert Redford introducing my film.
Of course. Yeah.
You know?
Of course. It was surreal then, and it was surreal this year.
Yeah.
I admire him so. I mean, I know that many people love him as an actor, and I do too. But as a director, I really admire him, and he has I think he has similar interests as a director as I do, which are human beings and the intricacies of their relationships and nature and complications. So he's like the grown-up version of what I'd strive for.
Nice person to strive to be like, for sure.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies, and I am talking today with writer-director Bart Freundlich, and we're talking about his brand new movie, After the Wedding, starring Julianne Moore and Michelle Williams and Billy Cudrup. One of the things that I just loved, like so many things I loved about the movie, was the cinematography. It was beautifully shot.
Thank you.
Beautifully shot. Where did you film? I know some of it was filmed in India, but where was the estate their home?
Yeah,
where was that?
Yeah. It was that was in Oyster Bay, Long Island. It was very important that there were these two very contrasting worlds. So there's southeast India where we shot our orphanage, and then there was this very affluent world of Oyster Bay, Long Island, and and they both kind of had their own visual styles. And the cinematographer's name is Julio Macat, and he is a longtime ASC member of the Cinematographers Union, and he's someone who he shot 1 million comedies. He shot Home Alone for one of his first movies ever, and then he became the go-to guy for comedies. And I met him when I made a film called Catch That Kid back in 2002, maybe. With Kristen Stewart. She was 13 years old, and it was sort of a Spy Kids like movie, and he and I really connected. And he'd always been trying to get himself out of that box of just being sort of a Hollywood DP and get into something that was very, very dramatic and moody. And he took this opportunity. He said yes to this, and then he kind of called in every favor that he had earned over the course of his 40 years of doing this. And so all of the labs and all of the camera houses wanted to help Julio, and by virtue of that, we were helped. That's how we got this camera. And he just put his all into it because he understood this was an important moment for him. And in fact, it's a big thing for film geeks like us. He's going to be on the cover of American Cinematographer magazine in September. It's a shot of Michelle Williams on a balcony in New York City with this gorgeous, gorgeous sky. Mm-hmm. And he's talking all about how the technicalities of how we shot the movie and the different colors in India we used and the different lenses we used. So for anyone who's interested in that stuff, it's a great, great article. And it was it revealed to me that my NYU film days had stayed with me because I was almost more excited about that than any other piece of press.
Well, I'm definitely going to look for that because it's just beautifully shot. It's breathtaking. I mean, there's just some interesting things that he did that obviously you work closely with him and decide what's going to be in the film, but just a lot of little things that were just very different and unique and added to the flavor of the movie, to the mood and the flavor of the movie, for sure. Yeah,
he's a guy who's just so respectful of actors, and most DPs, directors of photography, love film, but not all of them love actors. And in this movie, we needed someone who was going to be a partner to me and to the actors and put them first. And Julio was always talking about how he wanted to light Julianne and Michelle and have it be accurate and real, however, also have them, look their best. And once they feel comfortable with someone like that, then they're very free to explore things emotionally that they might not otherwise feel comfortable exploring. Their guard gets to go down. So it's actually more important for these peripheral reasons than just for what comes out on camera, on screen at the end.
Now that is very interesting. I never would have thought about that. that how much the cinematography for the actor helps them with their. I mean, obviously on the screen you see that, but in the sense that them feeling comfortable with the cinematographer. And
also,
really thought about that.
He operates his own camera, which is not always what happens. Sometimes you have someone just designated as an operator, but it means that when Julianne is having her big emotional breakdown, Julio's the one, other than Billy Crudup, who is sitting closest to her. He's right there, and I think there has to be a sense of trust. But visually, he was like a painter in the film. It really is beautiful, and I think it was a way of us differentiating ourselves from the original film as well, which was a much different style, much more raw, was handheld, was out of. It wasn't the dogma style school of filmmaking, but it was like that. It was very rough, and that served a purpose. And in our movie, laying back and allowing a frame to be moved about by the actors, or using a selective focus during the wedding scene just to let you know who you could pay attention to, and that kind of controlling the eye of the audience. So I love that kind of stuff. I hope your audience does too. But it's very intricate, but I love that part of the art of filmmaking, that you then put it all together and you don't think about it if the film is working for you. It just has an overall effect on you, I think.
Yeah, it certainly does. Because they sent me a screener, obviously, to be able to do this interview, and I always say to everyone, you must see movies in the movie theater. I'm a big proponent of that, as everybody knows, and I am definitely going to go back to the movie theater to see this.
I'm so glad.
It was beautiful just on my home screen, and I do not have a big, screen, just on the one I have, so I can't wait to see it on the big screen. Oh,
that's great. Yeah, it's really worth seeing on the big screen. I mean, if for no other reason, there's really two main reasons why I think anyone could appreciate this movie, and I think the cinematography and the acting are just top notch. It's a very emotional story, but in that way that's cathartic and at least leaves me feeling more connected to the world and like you've had a real experience, but without dragging you through the mud so deeply that you feel like you've been beat up. It's still entertaining. So I think that the acting and the cinematography, and as well as Michael Dana's score, the music he did for the movie, he won an Oscar for Life of Pi, and he's very connected to India and his music, and he just wrote a gorgeous score.
Oh,
thank you. I'm glad. I chose well. I've learned as I get older that how important it is to choose everyone and then give them the space.
And that's the best way to work, I think. It is to allow that creative process to take place. How long did it? I mean, you were aware of the original, obviously, but how long did it actually take to get this film made once you wrote the script and started to try to raise the money?
Well, before I came around, it was 12 years of a producer named Joel Michaels, who had fallen in love with Suzanne's film and was trying to get it made for all this time because he believed so deeply in it. And it just didn't catch for one reason or the other. I mean, making a film is really like pushing a boulder up a hill, and you just have to keep going, and you're not quite ever sure when you're going to reach the top, but you can't let up for 1 second. And when he found me, it took a while. I'd say it took about 6 months of messing around with the screenplay and the movie to see if I could just do a straightforward rewrite that would have two men in the lead again. And it wasn't interesting me, and I felt like I wasn't able to put any of myself into it because it wasn't different enough, and I'm used to writing my own original screenplays. And so it wasn't until Julianne saw the movie and was really moved by this one particular character. And she didn't even suggest that I write it for her. She just was moved by this person. And I mentioned it to the producers, and they said, well, why don't you try to write it? Why don't you try a gender swap? And I didn't think it would work. But as I went along, the things that I thought were going to be these challenges turned out to be the defining aspects of what made it interesting again. Yeah,
it is interesting. And I'm, I did not see the original. Maybe now I'll go back and see the original. But I think having the two women as the lead, it makes it, you're right, very interesting.
And it kind of modernized it a bit. And it also was nice. I found found it to be really nice to have. It highlighted for me the different ways in which we treat women and men in film most of the time. It's not ever one thing. But the minute I switched the genders of those lead roles, I realized how three-dimensional both of those women were, because the men had the three-dimensional parts, and there was two strong female performances in Suzanne's film, but they didn't have they were really supporting. And then Billy came on and played what was usually was the woman's role, which was more supporting, and I was able to kind of make that a bit more three-dimensional. But it did highlight for me, like, oh my God, there aren't a ton of roles with women, more than one woman in the movie who has a really three-dimensional part.
Bart, I can keep talking with you for hours, but unfortunately our time is up. But this has been fascinating. I just wish you so much success with this movie. I absolutely loved it, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. For those that we've been talking to, writer-director Bart Freundlich, and we're talking about After the Wedding. If you've missed some of the Jan Price shows, go to thejanpriceshow.com, and all of our past shows are on the website, plus the Jan Price Movie Minute movie reviews.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.